Hi, and thanks for coming aboard on this mission to get my Square B up and going on my 9mm. Now, I originally purchased this back in the COVID days and thinking, things are going kind of crazy, better have a way to make my 9mm. I personally don't shoot 9, my wife and my sons do, but I felt that we needed to do something. And at the time, my wife goes, well, just buy the new 750. It was just starting to come out. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And we kind of went back and forth, and she's usually right. I mean, I went through 3 different brands on my shotgun shell reloader and ended up back with a Dillon who did it right the first time. So, it was kind of one of those things, but let's get down to it. The Square B is a great little tool. Now, what I mean by a little tool is it's a small footprint. It only does, certain items. It's got 4 stations, so you have to know that that's what you want. And also, it is a little slower, I mean, if it had a case feeder and some other things, it'd probably be a little bit easier and better. Now, would I tell you that I would go out and purchase a 750 now? Yes, I would tell you I would have bought a 750 and moved forward. But I didn't, so I've got to make the best out of this. And the very first thing that I did was I came out and got it all built, and I didn't show that, but that's what I did. I built it all together. I made a video on the pedestal that I make because this is my center spot, and I pull things off and put my single stages and different things here in this center spot. So I explain in another video how I did that. And so I've got this up and going. Now, the first thing I did was to go out and get my primers. I have to tell you, I looked for primers for a year and a half trying to find primers. Small pistol primers are hard to find. And I found a guy who had some, but he needed large rifle primers, which I had a boatload of. So we did a good swap out on that. So I got the primers, and I have a picture of me opening the box up and dumping them in to my separator, and then of course shaking it and separating it until they were all one direction. And then I picked it up and put it into, picked it up with my primer tube. Where'd that go? Oh, here it is. And I started off and picking them up, and I had a hard time. And then I looked at the end of the tube, and there was some plastic on the end of it. Now I'm going to show you a picture of a good one because I threw the old one away, and I should have taken a picture of it. But it had little flashes of plastic in it, so the primer wouldn't go in right. So once I put the right tip on, I picked them all up, and then I put them into my primer feeder. Now, one of the great things about this primer feeder is that it has an alarm. So when my primers start running down and it gets down to the very last, I think you have about 2 left, it starts going off and saying, hey, bonehead, put some more primers in here. So I think this is a great investment. I have it on all my others. Loaders, so I would say definitely do that. Now, I don't have the Dillon powder buzzer that goes in there, and I don't really need it because I'm watching the powder pretty much. I fill it up about halfway and work it down. Now on my 900 behind me, I fill that puppy all the way to the very top because it takes that whole tube in order to get through a couple of 100 rounds. So, and maybe 300. So it's one of those things where I don't really think that there's a huge need for that. Now, once I got the primers in, I wanted to figure out my powder dump and how much I needed to put in each bullet in each case. And so what I did is I went to my manual and I looked up that page and figured out the powder I was using and how much I needed, a min and a max, okay? I don't ever run the max. I usually run an average of the min and max divided by 2. That way I get a good average in the middle, and I'm not overpowering my firearms. It just seems to work for me. I know there's a lot of people out there that go, well, I always go to the max, and so on. I never go to the max, I always go to the min. Whatever that is, whatever works for you, that's what I would suggest doing. Now, you know, I set it up, I pulled the handle quite a few times and tried to dial it in, started dialing it in. Now, one of the things that I have on this is a aftermarket knob, okay? I'm not really keen with Dillon's wrenches. And so I put this knob on, and it's an aftermarket. You can get it in a lot of places on the internet. I'll put something in below to show you where to get it, but it's a great little tool, and I just dialed it and hit it and dialed it and hit it. Now, this is my powder measure cup, and it's got a little powder in it. And what I would do is I'd pull it, I would dump it in there. Now, once you get your measure out, you have to go out and make sure that the weights are correct. So I hit it, and then I put the cup on it, and I tared it with the cup weight on it. So that way, when I dumped it in, the powder in, it would just show the powder weight. So I've got some pictures of that as I did that. So I'll show you that while we're really kind of talking about this right now. So anyway, I did that about 8 or 10 times, and so I started to get my averages, and that's the key, is to get your averages. So I'd pull it and check it, and pull it and check it, and pull it and check it, and I came up with a very, very close number, which is just right at about 3.7, 3.8 grains. And so that's what I'm loading into this. And so once I got that dialed in, then it was time to verify that it was seating the primers properly. So I dropped a couple of cases in, pulled it, deprimed it, and then primed it with a primer. And it was perfect. It set a good motion on the bottom. It was very smooth. These are a few that I've done, and they've turned out really, really well. Now this is practice ammo. And so that's what I'm building, is practice ammo. My wife carries, has a concealed carry. She always carries, a hollow point when she's out carrying, but something to think about. So once I got all that dialed in and got the primers dialed in, then I just ran it through a few cycles, about 4 or 5 cycles. And I think I have that on tape, so I'll show that to you. But just to make sure everything was working. And so it did. It worked flawlessly. Now here's the problem that I have with this loader. It's right here. My hand. It's too big and too fat to get the case in here and get my fingers in there to drop the bullet in. It's hard. I gotta admit to you, it is hard. So I kind of think about, if you're a big guy, that this may not be the loader just for that reason, is to set up going back and forth and going back and forth and going back and forth. That's pretty hard to do. And so you got to kind of think about that when you look at this. I've got to tell you, Dillon is a phenomenal product. And Will I use this? Yes, I'll use it. Probably get a 650 or a 750 rather, and do 9mm, and I'll use this for my 357. I don't carry the 357. I shoot the 357. I have a 44 mag. So I'll use the 44 mag. I'll do a manual setup on, but the 357 might be a nice idea to use this. Again, gonna make it that much harder because it's a longer shell and I've got to get my fingers in there. So it's something I won't produce a large amount of shells through. But you know, I just feel it's so important to let you see how this worked, how I did it, and it's working good. And it's a typical Dillon product. You can't go wrong. I hope this answers any questions you've had. Please subscribe below, and I'll hit you with another one real quick. Thank you.